It has been an exciting morning already for me. We got to go over and patch Evelyn's leg up, so it's nothing like feeling like you're working on a MASH unit before you get to preach, so that is always a fun thing. Always enjoy getting to come over and share with you guys. I love working with the kids. Sometimes it's nice talking to somebody who's at least close to your height, and that you can use big words like church and then and no. So again, I'm thankful to be with you guys this morning and just to share a few things that have been on my heart for a little bit, just as we see what's going on in the world around us, abroad and at home. And hopefully, whether it's a joke I tell this morning, it's something that I say, whether I say it right or I mess it up, hopefully it's something that you're able to take with you and use it in your everyday life. So we've all faced that moment when we've wondered to ourselves just exactly what the title of this sermon is this morning. What's love got to do with it? For you, it may have been when you just had an argument with a loved one. Maybe it was when you just broke up in a relationship that you really wanted to be in. For some of you, it may have been in 1984 when Tina Turner belted the words, "What's love got to do with it?" Some of you back then were rocking the Jerry curls and you had the zipper pants and you were driving the Trans Ams. It was a great time. But let's leave the 80s and the 80s. When I went to Zimbabwe this past February, it's been almost a year, it's crazy to think about that. Many of you know that was the first time that I had flown. What a way to learn how to fly, right? And so when you're flying, especially when you're working with a nonprofit organization, you try to fly as cheaply as possible, which is great and it's fine until you get into another country. And they don't have all of the safety regulations that we have here. They don't even have a lot of the basic amenities that we have here. But I remember we were in Johannesburg, South Africa, and we board the plane, and at this point in the journey, I am exhausted. I had just flown 18 hours across the ocean from Atlanta to Johannesburg, South Africa. I am tired. I no longer want to be on this mission. I am over it at this point. But we get ready for takeoff, and if any of you have ever flown, it takes forever to get ready for takeoff. But we get turned, and they give us the okay, and then all of a sudden we get put on standby, and we're like, great, what? How long are we going to be here? Because, of course, they won't let you get up and use the bathroom. They won't bring you anything to drink or eat. You can do nothing that a basic human might need to do when you are put on standby. And we see this other plane has been given the okay in front of us. We're not sure why they didn't tell us that to begin with. But we see this plane go in front of us, and it goes down the runway. And then all of a sudden, you hear the engines just shut off. And you see it kind of just roll a long way down the runway. And it gets to the point where it should be flying, and it ain't flying. And you're like, well, the engines aren't on. That's probably good that it's not in the air. But it just stops. And we're all sitting there, and we're like, so, what do we do now? So the plane's sitting there, and you hear the engines kick in. They rev the engines up, and they rev them down, up and down a couple times, and sounded fine. And the plane turns around, and then all of a sudden, it takes off back down the runway. And we're looking in amazement. We're going, what in the world is going on? And all of a sudden, you hear the engines shut off. But this time, the brakes engage, and you see the plane kind of shudder to a stop. Now, I am worried. Because though I have just flown 18 hours and I am now an expert, I could probably give Amelia Earhart a run for her money at this point, I realize that the name on that plane matches the name on the plane that I just got on. And I know that I'm new at this, but I know that they don't have to warm the plane up before they take off. And so we watch as the plane eventually goes back in to the terminal, and we finally get the okay, and we take off. And as we take off, eventually, after they give you the clear, you can unbuckle your seatbelt, and that you probably didn't have buckled anyways, and the stewardess are bringing around refreshments. I had to ask. I was like, ma'am, what in the world were they doing? What was that all about? And she said, there was something wrong with that plane. And I'm thinking to myself, duh. I am an idiot, and I know that there's something wrong with that plane. But then she went on and she said, it is our policy at South African Airlines that if there is something wrong with the plane, we don't fly. Thank God. I would hate to get on a flight if that was their policy to fly if there was something wrong with the plane. But safety first is a great philosophy to live by when we're talking about traveling, whether it be by plane or by car or by train. But it's a terrible way to live, isn't it? We are constantly invited to take risks at work and in our everyday lives, in our relationships. And in the passage that we're going to be taking a look at this morning, Jesus invites us to take some risks, to get out of our comfort zones, if you will. He wants us to take a challenge that isn't easy. And if we are going to get better at the two things that Jesus said mattered most, there's incredible risk involved. But before we get to that, whenever I am having a bad day, whether it be at the hospital or whether it be here in ministry, yes, there are some not so good days in ministry, it helps when I look at other jobs that are worse than mine. And I want to show you guys a couple pictures that I look at that always make me feel better about my job. Let's look at this first one real quick. The armpit smeller. When they say that the deodorant is fresh for 72 hours, I don't know why deodorant needs to be fresh for 72 hours. This is how they find out. This is a process that we still use today. With all of the technological advances that we have, we still got to smell somebody's armpit. Makes me feel a little bit better about my job. How about this one? The target holder. They're shooting at this target. It's bad enough to be that guy, but I'm glad I wasn't the guy that they got rid of for that guy to get this job. Or how about this one? The elephant poop catcher cleaner-upper. I have had a few days in ministry just like that. Or sometimes we don't get our jobs right. Like this one. So close, yet so far away. Or how about this one? This is from our friends over in England. They said, paint the lines, and I painted the lines. Or, this is one of my favorite signs of all time. Anyone caught exiting through this door will be asked to leave. I think they're comfortably okay with it at that point. Or, this one, which shows off the wonderful redneck ingenuity that we have. Well, George, the toilet's just too close to the door. We can fix that. I guess I'd hate to be on the toilet if somebody tries to open the door. I don't know which end it'd be worse to be on. But in the same way, Jesus has given us a job that is not complicated, but it's hard. The job requires some risk, but it's not dangerous. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to Matthew chapter 22. The verses will be intermittently on the screens this morning, but it always helps if you guys have your text. I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation. That's just the translation I like and prefer. I know. But some of those questions, like the great American theologian Theodore Dr. Seuss Geisel said, he said, sometimes the questions are complicated, but the answers are simple. And this is going to be one of those times. But you have to remember that the Jews had 613 commands that they were given in the Old Testament. And those had been written down and multiplied and divided up to over 1,000 different rules and regulations and commands that they were to keep. And the Pharisees were the keepers of that law, and they made darn sure that you were keeping that law, and they would let you know when you messed up. But there was a great disagreement between the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Zealots and these other sects of the Jewish community about which commandments, which laws were most important? You see, this isn't a sincere question at all that's presented to Jesus this morning. It's a trap. No matter what answer he gives, there is going to be an opinion poll the next morning that shows his approval and his disapproval rating, regardless of how he answers this question. But let's look at his answer. Picking up in verse 37, it says, "And Jesus replied, 'You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments.'" Jesus says, you want to know what matters most? Love God with all of your heart, with every fiber of your being, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Because everything that God has said up until now, all the law, all the prophets, all the commands of God, every prophecy, every prophet who came speaking on behalf of God, he says, all of that is hinging on these two commands. Jesus tells us that if we want the door of our lives to swing more freely, that we have to hang it off of these two things. Love God and love your neighbor. Now, I try to ask myself every day as I get ready, whether it's to come here, whether it's on a day off, whether it's to go work at the hospital, I say, God, how can I love you better today? And the second one is, God, how can I love people who just drive me insane? And honestly, I don't succeed at either one of those most days. But there are days that I do. But what would happen if you and I got better at the two things that Jesus said mattered most? There are a lot of things that we want to do as Christ followers. But sometimes we try to run before we can walk. Jesus said, this is as simple as I can make it. This is the basics. I can break it down into 4 words. Love God, love neighbor. He said, that's as easy as I can make it. And you say, well, loving God sounds good, right? But it's hard, isn't it? Because we love other things. You say, Jesus, God, I love you, but I love other stuff too. But God says, love me with your heart, your soul, your mind, and your intellect, the things that you're good at, the things that you're not good at. He says, love me with every fiber within you. But again, God, I love other things. God, I love my fiance. That's why I asked her to marry me, and for whatever reason, she said yes. God, I can't not love her. My parents love their grandchild. They're probably glad that they didn't kill my sister when she was growing up. They may want to kill me someday when I have children. They might be a completely different story. I'll let you know how that one works out. I love sports. Sports has taken up more than half of my life. And I love the work that I do. Most days. You see, sometimes I get those things out of balance. But Jesus comes to remind us that I can love God because he loves me. And I've always wondered how different my story would be without grace. My family's history, going back just a couple of generations, is checkered at best. The family that you guys see is just a small microcosm of the bigger arching part of our family. And nothing from our family's past would be anything to brag about. I think my folks would agree with me. But there was a remarkable story change that started with my parents. And then they passed it on to my sister and I. And then it was actually my sister and I who begged and pleaded with my grandparents, Pap and Gran, that you guys know from here. We begged and pleaded enough that they finally decided that they would go to church that I think just shut us up, and eventually they fell in love with the Lord too. And our entire story changed. Our family got a better story out of it, all because of what God did for us, before we even knew who he was. And I'm amazed when I stop and think that the God of the universe, the creator of all things, loves me. No ifs, no ands, no buts. He loves me. Warts, wounds, wobbles, and all. He loves me. And he loves you, too. He loves who I am now. He loves me even after the things in the past that I wish that I could undo. He loves me. He loves me, period. There isn't anything that I'm going to do today that's going to make God love me more, and there's nothing that I'm going to do today that will cause God to love me less. He loves me. And in light of that love, Jesus says, you ought to love him back. And he says, don't just love him back with part of you or just a small section of you. He says, love him with everything that you have. And this love that God has for us caused God to move. And we're going to look at that very quickly here this morning. That God has always been moving toward us. Not us moving toward him, but he has been moving toward us, even from the very start. Look at what it says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, second verse of the Bible. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters, before anything existed. And then he went to the mountaintop, and in Exodus 19:9, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, I will come to you in a thick cloud, Moses, so the people themselves can hear me when I speak with you. Then they will always trust you. You see, Moses met God there, but the rest of the people of Israel were still distant. But then God decided to move a little closer, and he moved into the tabernacle. And in Exodus chapter 40, verse 34, it says, then the cloud covered the tabernacle, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. His presence was among them, but they still couldn't connect. There was that veil that went into the Holy of Holies that they couldn't cross. And then Jesus shows up, and in John chapter 1, verse 14, we read that, so the Word became human and made his home among us, and he was full of unfailing love and faithfulness. And we have seen his glory and the glory of the Father, the Father's one and only Son. The Message, which is just another translation of the Bible, it's more of a paraphrase. It says, and God moved into the neighborhood. God was not just some distant deity who let us like ants go about our everyday life and he just stood from afar and watched us. He literally came to dwell among us. And then, let's look what happens through a relationship with Christ, the gift of forgiveness. And then the third part of the Trinity, the Holy Spirit. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16, we read, don't you realize all of you together are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God... Come on. Don't you know who they are? Don't you know what they look like? Don't you know how they act? You want me to love them? Now, I always thought that I was a good neighbor because, man, over the years, we have had some bad neighbors. I can remember once when our neighbor's almost Godzilla-sized pig got out, and it was running against the side of the house. And Mom and Dad were in West Virginia, and I'm at home by myself, and I called Dad. I'm like, Dad, I either need the gun or I need the baseball bat, because this thing has woken me up, and I am now going to eat it for the next 2 months. Those were the same neighbors we ended up finding out had a warrant for their arrest, showed up the next night with a horse trailer, loaded up everything, and disappeared. Pretty easy to be a better neighbor than that. Or we had a neighbor who decided to plow their driveway right into ours. After Dad and I had just spent 2 hours clearing our driveway out with shovels because we're not fancy and have snow blowers and snow plows. So, thank you, kindly neighbor. You couldn't have just plowed it right on through. You just stopped right in our driveway. We appreciate that. Or when I was in college, I had food stolen from my dorm. I've told the teenagers and the students a couple stories about college. I had a guy who played on the baseball team with me who literally stole my Under Armour sweatpants off of me while I slept. Thanks. Of course, he didn't come back the next year because I probably would have killed him, but So you'll forgive me if I have a hard time loving those people. But what would happen if you and I were to love the people around us? I'll give you a moment, and I want to see how much you know about the people who live around you. You don't have to answer this out loud. You don't have to jot it down. I'm going to give you all maybe 5 seconds. But just within a radius of you, whether you live in townhouses or apartments where you're stacked up on each other, or maybe your nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. What's your neighbor's name? Like their real name, not the name that maybe you have come up for them, like the old people with the yappy dog, or the young person who's always throwing parties. What is their name? All right, can you tell me something about them? Maybe their career or a hobby, and if they drive a truck that says Joe's Plumbing, that's kind of cheating, that's advertisement. But tell me something about your neighbor, a career that they do, or a hobby that they have. And then how about this one? Do you know a hope or a hurt or a dream of theirs? You see, when you start to take inventory like this, it's going to reveal one of two things. You get your neighbor's business way too much, or it's shameful that you have lived beside somebody for so long and know absolutely nothing about them. What would happen if you were the best neighbor? What would happen if, dare I say, you loved your neighbor? What if your neighbors saw Christ and how you interacted with them? Because again, in Romans chapter 15, verse 2, we're told that we should help others do what is right and to build them up in the Lord. You see, we live in a world that expects more from social media than we do from relationships. And it's fascinating to me that we live in a time where we have more connections than we have ever had before. And yet, we have less depth of relationships. Our homes can become nothing more than a place where we sleep and keep our things. Researchers, they call this cocooning, or super cocooning. We close ourselves off from the rest of the world, only worried about what we partake in. We get home and we rush inside, we shut our blinds, we shut the garage door as quick as we can, hoping that nobody will talk to us. And then we turn on the TV and we dive into it, or we get on social media, and that's where we get our community from. If I were to ask you who you thought the apostle of love would be, I could probably expect a variety of answers. Some of you might say, Peter. Peter's a pretty prominent figure. Or how about Paul? After all, he did write 1 Corinthians 13, which is called the love chapter. In fact, if you go to probably any wedding within the last 30 years, you've heard some portion of that read. But the answer seems to be a very unlikely candidate. It's actually John. Yes, John, the fisherman, the son of Zebedee, one half of the sons of thunder with his brother James. Yes, the same John who, when Jesus was traveling through Samaria to go to Jerusalem, and they went to a village, and the village wouldn't welcome them. James and John, they said, God, should we call down fire from the sky to burn them up? But this is the guy who's going to tell us about love. John offers us some advice of how we should live with one another. If you still have your Bibles, flip with me to 1 John chapter 4. And in 1 John chapter 4, we're going to be starting with verse 7, and this is what John writes. He says, Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God. But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. So we are told point blank to love one another. Well, why? Well, because love comes from God. It is an essential part of who God is, because God is love. The Greek word for true love is agape. It's different from the Greek word for brotherly love, which is philia, which is where we get Philadelphia from, brotherly love. But the love that God gives us is agape. And agape is the highest possible level of love in the Greek language. And agape embraces a universal, unconditional love that transcends, that serves, regardless of circumstances. This is a love that far and above exceeds any kind of love that we have ever known. And then moving on in 1 John, and starting in 9, we then read that God showed how much he loved us by sending his one and only Son into the world so that we might have eternal life through him. This is real love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins. Dear friends, since God loved us that much, we surely ought to love one another. Again, we're given a reminder of just how much God loves us, but I want to focus on how that love should affect us. John says that if God loved us like that, then we, seeking to live like Christ in obedience to God, should love one another in the same way. We should show our love not because we were loved first, but because God first loved us. Notice there is no criteria for who we are supposed to love. We aren't just supposed to love those who look like us, who talk like us, who think like us, or act like us. There's no basis for that love. And then John says in 4, 12 through 16, no one has ever seen God. But if we love each other, God lives in us, and his love is brought to full expression in us. And God has given us his Spirit as proof that we live in him and he in us. Furthermore, we have seen with our own eyes and now testify that the Father has sent his Son to be the Savior of the world. All who declare that Jesus is the Son of God have God living in them, and they live in God. We know how much God loves us, and we have put our trust in his love. God is love, and all who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. John tells us that if we love, must be avoided at all costs. He said those who claim to follow God but live in the darkness are liars and should be avoided. He said those who claim that they have not sinned are liars and should be avoided. He says those who claim to know Jesus while blatantly not following his teachings are liars and should be avoided. And then John comes to include those who claim to love God but has hate in his or her heart for his or her brother and sister. That is quite a serious offense to be held in the same group as these other accusations. John says that there's a correlation between how we treat others and how our relationship with God looks. He says that we must learn to love the ones whom we can see, to fully love the one that we can't. So that means that for us to love God, we must develop love for others. This ties back to our original text from Matthew 22, and Paul wrote about this, in fact, in his letter to the church of Galatia. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, he says, share each other's burdens, and in this way, obey the law of Christ. Loving God and loving your neighbor takes some balance, doesn't it? If you try to balance something and you stand still, it's hard. You might lose it. Or if you ignore it altogether, then there's no way that you'll accomplish it either. But if we're going to love God and love our neighbor, it takes two things. Constant, slight adjustments, and keeping our eyes upward, like we read about in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, when it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of the faith, let us strip off every weight that weighs us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. And because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding shame, and now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Think of all the hostility that he endured from sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. So, here we are, back to what got this all started. What's love got to do with it? The answer is quite simple. It has everything to do with it. The word love loves or loved in the past tense, it increases again up to 697 times. I'd say that it has quite a lot to do with it after all. From the very moment that he created everything, from the sacrifice that Jesus made of his own life in exchange for ours at the cross, from the way that we live our lives and treat each other until he returns. It's all about love. Maybe you never knew that that kind of love was available to you. Maybe in the past you've been hurt by someone who promised love but left you hurt or broken or empty. Maybe you can't figure out why it seems like you're just constantly at odds with everybody. The answer starts with you. And it starts in here. And it starts by letting him in there and changing you from the inside out. If you let him in, you will experience love like you won't find anywhere else. It is never ending, regardless of circumstances, past or present. And it's free. We are told that the true love costs us something. And as I have gone through the engagement process, I have learned that firsthand. I guess if I wasn't in ministry, I'd go be a jeweler somewhere because they're making a killing. But if we're willing to sacrifice that for someone here on earth, how much more has God sacrificed for us? And it costs you nothing. So we're going to give you an opportunity to accept that love. If you've never accepted that love before, we would certainly love to have you do that this morning. If you have accepted that love in the past and maybe you feel like you just need a refill or a refresher, we would love to talk to you this morning. The elders are here, myself, we are here. We'll chat with you until the new members' dinner tonight. How awesome would that be to be the newest new member at the new member dinner tonight? I guarantee you, you'll be first in line. But we're going to sing a song of invitation. And again, if you would like to respond to that, to feel the Holy Spirit moving you in that way, we would ask that you respond. Just come forward. We don't have to do anything fancy. We can do a chat. And again, we will sing this song. If you feel so moved, please come. Let's stand.